Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co-hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
There's further to go for what it means to be a hospitality provider in this space, and personalization to the guest when they show up. And by personalization, I don't just mean like you printed out their name and you put it on a basket and put it on the dining room table. I mean, you're interacting with the guest ahead of time. You're understanding what they want to get out of this trip and what's important to them and how you can help them and how you can help manage that experience from start to finish so that they have the best one.
Welcome to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast where we discuss all things hospitality, hotels, and business. You can find us online at slicktalkthepodcast.com and on every podcast listening platform.
What's up, all my Slick Talkers? You are about to listen to the Vacation Rental Mastermind series. I have sat down with some of the biggest experts in the vacation rental space all over the globe, and we created a 10-episode series where we dive in from how to be a host, how to maximize your property, how to manage a property from big management companies, as well as technology and fraud protection for your guests and for yourself as a host and an owner/investor. So tune in every week for the next 10 weeks to enjoy the Vacation Rental Mastermind series on Slick Talk, and check out every single guest that's going to be on the show on all social media platforms.
Are you spending too much time coordinating cleans, inspections, and maintenance repairs? Are you using manual processes like spreadsheets, paper checklists, and text messages to communicate with your teams? Breezeway's property care platform takes the headache out of operations and makes it easy for you to deliver the best experience to your guests and owners. With tools like task monitoring dashboards, customizable checklists, and a user-friendly mobile app, your staff can perform high-quality work in the field, and you can be confident that every property is ready for the next day. Visit breezeway.io/slicktalk to find out how Breezeway can transform the way you care for properties. Or to learn more about our messaging tech, text us at 617-870-0112.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and today we are actually featuring Breezeway as a bonus episode for the Mastermind series on the show. So I'm, getting to work and talk with all these masterminds in the industry. And today I have the pleasure of introducing Jeremy, who's the CEO and founder of Breezeway. And Jeremy, how are we doing today?
Awesome. Thanks, Will. Excited to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this episode just because I've known of you, like I said earlier, I've known of you with your journey with FlipKey and just other things in the industry. I like to geek out a little bit. So I think you're a perfect fit for the masterminds. So yeah, I'm just really pumped and glad that you're here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this as well. And, I think you've got a lot of experience as well. I think it's going to lead to a great conversation.
Yes, sir. So let's kind of just dive in. Let's I always like to say, the phrase, let's find your origin story. Tell us a little bit about your background in the vacation rental industry. Because like I just said, I know a FlipKey, but really let's dive into your origin and your beginning of what got you, so hooked into what you do.
Yeah. So I think, the story goes back to 2006. And some friends and business partners of mine here in Boston, we started to look at vacation rentals, and what was going on in the business. And at that time, it was really simultaneous with HomeAway was making a big investment, rolling up companies like VRBO and lots of other websites that nobody really remembers anymore, like A1 Vacations and Cyber Rentals. And while that was going on, there was this interesting sort of existential threat in vacation rentals, or at the time, that's what it felt like, between property managers and rent by owners.
Yeah.
And I was at a VRMA conference in Virginia, and there was a whole session about how we can fight against, it was a property management conference, how we can fight against rent by owners and define the brand and things like that. And we internalized that and started thinking about it and thought, like, wow, this is so interesting. No one had guest reviews on properties at the time. And, TripAdvisor had lots of hotel reviews. TripAdvisor wasn't even doing, restaurant reviews at that time. Certainly no one was doing experiences or events and trips. And so we were looking at it and we thought, wow, this is really interesting. The average manager is going to get lost on these websites mixed in with other inventory, and they'll have no way of actually demonstrating whether you're a professional manager with 100 properties or you're a professional manager with one property. Mm-hmm. You just take yourself really seriously. Hard to separate yourself from everybody else and have some brand recognition. And because nobody had guest reviews, and that was really the hook that got us going.
Interesting. So it's kind of like, I don't know, what year was this exactly for you?
This was 2006 into 2007.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. So it's pretty much it goes into the whole aspect of optimizing your listing, right? Pretty much getting risen to the top, I guess, is really what it gets lost in when you have, like you said, there's so much inventory. I think that's interesting to.
Yeah, I think it was really what was going to happen, and what we were seeing was that a manager, or an owner, somebody who's a real professional that takes himself seriously, really cares about the guest experience, had no way of communicating that on the listing because there weren't reviews.
True.
And we would talk to operators, and they would say, "Oh, we can't possibly ask people for reviews. This is somebody's home." Mm-hmm. And the owner's going to take it so seriously. And so that was one of the things we had to, sort of coach people through to overcome, that these reviews were okay and they would actually be really helpful to your business. And that would help your conversion rates and really help demonstrate the care and the way you were taking care of the guests.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think being in 2006, I wasn't even close to being in the industry at that time. But, the cool thing is like it shows that from 2006 to that 2020, that's like the number one thing that we preach as property managers or professionals is, review, get like all those reviews that you can. So it just kind of shows the power behind it from back then to now.
Yeah, it's funny. People would, instead of reviews, you'd go to a property manager's website and there'd be a choice quote in quotation marks that they just sort of put on the webpage from a prior guest. And that was the accepted standard of what you wanted to have on your landing page.
That's interesting. I like that. Well, with it being, it's not like a super simple idea, but I think, the fact that taking the powerful, I guess the word just power of reviews, right? And turning that into, what became FlipKey. What challenges did you face with that? I'm sure, like you said, probably some fight back or kind of, I guess not as much understanding from the owner side when there's, and the property managers, kind of like you were saying, but what was the biggest challenges that you guys faced with that whole onboarding and kind of making this a normal thing?
I think there was a little bit of that initial pushback on what's going to happen when we do ask a lot of folks for their opinion and for their review. It's kind of an unknown. It's like doing your first NPS score for your company and wondering what you're going to get back and how do your customers what do your customers really think of you? And so I think that was a hurdle that we had to get over, but we pushed through that. And I think, what's amazing about the vacation rental industry is these rental managers are they're hospitality providers. They take their job seriously. They really do care about the guest. Yeah. And they wanted that feedback. They wanted to make sure they could get it in a controlled way so they could understand it, but they wanted that feedback. So I wouldn't say that was one of our bigger ones. I think it's typical. HomeAway was at the same time they were buying listings, listing sites. They were also buying software companies, and they were a formidable competitor and partner of ours at FlipKey and TripAdvisor as we did that deal. And I think it's just how you build up that business, a two-sided marketplace over time, attracting travelers, making sure that we really took it seriously to try and treat our clients by delivering real value to them, making sure that the leads they were getting were great leads, and that we were really pushing through, new folks that would actually be helpful to their business, mm-hmm. and that we could be a marketing partner for them. So I think that's, we took that challenge seriously in the face of trying to grow that business. That's sort of the hardest thing. How do you keep doing that while you're growing incredibly quickly, and spreading that value around to lots and lots of managers and owners who are signing up?
No, for sure. And I think, like you kind of just said, is keeping the core mission and the core why. Like you guys started it for a reason, right? The FlipKey, it was to provide value to owners and to managers. And I think, like you just said, when you do grow like that, a lot of companies miss out on the opportunity to really enhance their why and their mission. They grow, and then all of a sudden they're completely different from where they started and lost kind of like that value and that touch of what their purpose was in the beginning. So I think that's really cool. And not many companies do that. So I'll give you kudos on that one.
Yeah, we try. I think you have to at least go into it, and same with you as an operator. You have to go into it mission driven. Yeah. Dedicate yourself to that, and continue to try hard. It's not easy to do, and you got to keep always checking yourself to make sure you're doing that.
For sure. No, I couldn't agree more. So, with that kind of like leaning into where you are today. So, what really happened, with your time into the birth of Breezeway? Let's talk about kind of where your journey from FlipKey to the Breezeway segue kind of took place, and kind of, I guess, the origin of that as well. That I think this all kind of in together.
Yeah, I couldn't get enough. I couldn't get enough vacation rentals, so I had to come back for more. I had great experience at FlipKey and at TripAdvisor, and I looked at the vacation rental industry and really the larger hospitality and property management market.
Yeah.
And I love this business because of its intersection between property management and hospitality. Mm-hmm. And as I looked at vacation rental managers and their operations, I felt that the guest experience was still the driving factor, and that now, more than help on the marketing side, what property managers and operators needed help with was meeting the changing demands of consumers to actually fulfill that guest experience and, take care of the property and make sure they were doing everything to portray their brand and deliver the kind of experience that they wanted to, a purposeful experience.
Yeah.
And if I looked at that, I know you folks will, you focus on hotels, restaurants, vacation rentals, really a broad definition of hospitality, which I think is really cool. And I look at it the same way. I think that, people want to move in the direction of hospitality living. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, that's a tough operational burden. And I felt people could use some help with it. And that was the driving force behind Breezeway, which was, hotels use specific software to manage their front office reservations and their distribution, and then they use other software really for their client interactions and their service and service optimization.
Mm-hmm.
And I think property management is going to head in that same direction as we all want hospitality living. This massive convergence. We like to talk about the convergence of hotels and vacation rentals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one sort of framework, but there's just a massive convergence of like how we live and the fact that like our everyday living, we are looking for a better hospitality experience there too.
No, honestly, you're speaking my language right now, Jeremy. So I love it. I think that is such a big key into the role of a lot of companies in the vacation rental, and like you said, restaurant, hotel, it's a broad aspect of hospitality, but it is hospitality. And at the end of the day, I'm kind of curious. So I want to ask is, for Breezeway, is this something that you noticed and saw when you were at Flipkey, or is this something that really was just kind of hit afterwards? I'm just kind of curious if this was always a back end idea for you.
Not in its incarnation today. It was not, but in the back of our minds, while we were still at Flipkey, we were looking at the struggles that operators were having and like the struggles that happen on the operation side, and how fragmented the market is. And I think, that more to the point, while I was at Flipkey and we were there building relationships with thousands of property managers over the course of, 9 years, many of these people became really close with a lot of these managers. And then in continuing conversations with them, became closer to their business and understanding what their business challenges were. And this was a challenge that kept coming up about how they run their operations and what's happening. And then sort of that combined with a lot of the macro trends and recognizing some of the challenges that we faced at Flipkey and TripAdvisor and how the world had changed on the marketing side. And I think is going to continue to change. I think property managers, there's going to be continued competition and margin compression as the big advertising, vehicles, the big marketing channels become stronger and stronger. It's going to put a lot of pressure on property managers. And as you have lots of smaller operators who are coming into the market, it's just there's more competition, not less. Clearly there's acquisitions, but I think there's more competition and not less. Mm-hmm. And it's going to refocus people on like what makes them really special is what they can do at the property and the service that they can deliver.
Exactly. No, I love that. And I think we're going to, like you said, we're going to continue to see it grow. We're going to continue to see the rise on the marketing, but also a statement I always make on the show, and a lot of my listeners already know this, but I have always been a firm believer that hotels, on the side of hospitality, hotels have always been the slowest to adapt into the change of the industry, whether it's marketing, whether it's update in tech or softwares or you name it, operations. They're always kind of slowest. They've been the big dogs for a long time, and not that vacation rentals are new. They're of course not new, but with the rise in Airbnb and then everything else that kind of has leaped the vacation rental industry, we're going to see such a, I think it's going to be a hurry up and catch up game where we're going to see a lot of, I would say like companies in the vacation rental space really taking off, really launching, really becoming the head dogs. And then we're going to see a lot of hotels from independent boutiques all the way to the massive, multi players like Marriott or Hilton really trying to do the catch up game, even though they are dipping their toe in the water. I think that they're not as open and willing to dive in as I think the vacation rental market really is. So we're going to continue to see that, I think, for a long, long time, unless it just becomes like overnight, but I really doubt that will happen.
Yeah, you must see this, right, with Stay Lux and sort of, I think that plays into this concierge, this concierge approach and high quality experience, unique experience that people are looking for. I think
Yeah.
those are some of the keys that will cause the big traditional players in the hotel space to, it's not as simple. This is a transition that's not as simple for them to make, because it's about unique inventory, authentic experiences. It's much different than their current inventory,
Yeah.
and it's going to take some serious work.
No, I agree. And yeah, for the Stay Lux side, for like our brand and for our properties, we definitely see, like we get asked quite often, me and my partners, we get asked, like, why is your properties doing so well? Like, why are you always booked? We are having a hard time getting, whether it's a little Airbnb, 2 bedroom, 2 bath, or actual, bigger property to the scale of ours. And for a lot of listeners, I haven't really dove in or given a much detail into what Stay Lux is, but it's our property management company out in the Pacific Northwest for luxury rentals, that are in the 10,000 square foot or more, just to give you like a visual. But with that, we see I think a big role in like what we're kind of talking about is, it's not that we're just listed, on all these channels and we have software and we do this. So it's not like a normal management company was 10 years ago. It's about the experience. It's about every single detail that goes into what the guest is going to see from the listing online, from any channel that they view, to the moment they drive up, and to how they feel and what they think of and how they're going to think of it in the future and want to come back. And so we really take into a big play of what the experience is and what the overall value. Obviously we have to run a business, and as a management company, it's really, you got to make your owners money, but you also got to make money and also keep your guests happy. So finding that fine line of experience and going to, I think the biggest part I've learned from like the whole hospitality industry is really, I think we see so many moments in our life, whether it's life or travel or hospitality, that we can enhance, that we can do something, we can go a little bit extra, put a little bit more thought into. And it's hard. Like, it's not easy. Like sometimes I catch myself like, oh, I definitely could have done this, or I definitely could have done that. But really taking the opportunity to just find those moments or even create them, and to really give that guest experience just that extra touch of wow, because then at the end of the day, that's where we're going to see the difference. And I think that's why, again, so many people ask us, how are you guys always being so booked? It's because we try to create that. And I think that's what's really different for a lot of, and like you were just saying, that we're going to see that shift, that mindset shift in overall inventory for hotels and vacation rental as well.
Yeah, I think I love, you said every single detail. And I think that is critical and continues to be underestimated. That is what the guest, there's a difference between getting a cleaner to come in and clean your house, and then the type of clean that is expected in a hotel or a hospitality experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And we all know that. Your audience knows that. Professional, property managers and owner operators who are doing this for real and really want to be successful at it, they understand the level of a clean that needs to be done. I think that's just one minor, that's just a small example of like every single detail. Like the experience is going to get tighter and tighter. I think what's super interesting, right? And I don't know if I've framed it this way before, but what's super interesting is like hotels are going to continue to push the envelope on the actual experience of being in that hotel, but they're falling behind on the inventory, whereas vacation rentals have the inventory, have the most desirable inventory, but they're going to be pushed hard on the experience to try and basically blend together super unique inventory that's authentic and private and feels like it's all your own, but with all the, touch points and incredible attention to detail that you would get in a hotel. That's the experience that people want, and it's extremely challenging to pull off, but the people who do it are the ones who are going to be rewarded.
No, I couldn't agree more. That is, and I don't know, I think the point I also want to make with this, as we're like going into this part of the conversation, that I think the underestimated value. So like, let's say Breezeway. So you guys are focused on the operations, right, of these management companies and creating that flow. I think that is one of the most underestimated value points, because if your operations suck, like if you don't know how to schedule and it's just chaotic and you're always just worried about getting maintenance or getting housekeeping or getting, whatever done prior or after the departure of the guest, prior to the arrival or after the departure, either way, I think you lose that opportunity so much because, like you said, the inventory is growing, especially in the vacation rental market, very unique inventory as well. These are people's homes that they've put a lot of time and effort into either building or purchasing or, renovating, whatever that goes into it, or as a sole investment. And then I guess what I'm trying to just overall say is that every attention to detail, it literally comes down to the point also on how you operate your business and how you keep the flow of everything going, because then when the flow is easier, that gives you more opportunities, right? That gives you I think the internal evaluation, self-awareness of saying, okay, we can go above and beyond now. We can create these experiences. We don't have to worry about all this, lack of housekeeping or communicating with the housekeeping team or the cleaner or whatever. You really get to take off that stress. And that's part of every detail. Like when I'm saying every detail of the guest experience, that is a huge part of it. And one of the most underestimated things I think we see in our industry with just, we're so focused on advertising and marketing and getting the bookings, right? And getting the occupancy or hitting that revenue mark. But then we miss that little but big key factor.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. I mean, you can look at the category of task management software or field management software as an efficiency gaining engine, cost savings engine, and that's valid. I look at it much closer aligned with your commentary around enabling more opportunity.
Yeah.
You're leveraging optimization of your team and of your activity so that you can then prioritize and actually enable more opportunity to service the guest. Whether that's offering more services, so now you feel enabled that you can actually offer midweek cleans, which, by the way, like everybody's going to have to figure out how they're going to start to do that. Mm-hmm. That's just going to have to happen. Guests are going to demand it, and people are going to have to figure it out. Or just other light touches and really being on top of the guest to deliver that concierge experience. And it's not an easy thing to do. I think there's definitely been a shift over, which has been great to see. When we started this a few years back, I went out to a VRMA conference in Arizona, and just building off of what you just said, Will, every session was about marketing, about optimizing your website, optimizing online booking channels, distribution. Mm-hmm. Everything was front office focused. How to handle your reservation staff, et cetera, what to do with trip insurance. Nothing was focused on the back end. There's a little bit of some cleaning training, but nothing about operations, literally no sessions about it. And what's nice to see is over the last few years, that's really developed and the audience is picking up on it, because I think managers have come around to understanding that this is the big play, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure your audience, knows as well, the best property managers know that, and I think owners, was really close. I think owners are picking up on this as well. Mm-hmm. But the best property managers know you have to make money on services. You can't just rely on the rental income.
Yeah.
You have to package around that reservation. You've got to package services, whether it's early check-in, late checkout, other services that you offer, et cetera. That's where you really can change the bottom line of the business. Mm-hmm. and sort of supercharge the business. And I expect we're going to start to see owners really start to think that way as well and want to enable those same levels of experiences.
No, I love this because it just really applies to, I think when, kind of like you were just saying, like, I'll just use an example. So we were just creating a proposal for an owner to bring their property onto our software and management company, right? So we're doing a normal proposal, doing all the research, doing all the, back end information, what do we think the nightly rate would be, cleaning fee, how many beds, heads and beds would we have, yada, 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 right? And it comes down to the overall price point. We're like, okay, here's an estimate of what we could do in off season in revenue, what we can do in high peak season, blah, 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 all that detail, right? But then we created a category for, like you said, the experiences, the services, because not only are we a luxury management company, but we're in the, like you said, we're in the moment of making experiences and memories and moments. And so I think when you take, okay, it's simple, like anybody can create a proposal, right? For saying your property is going to estimate, this is obviously a proposal, not hard numbers, but, saying we estimate you'll make this much in the off season, we'll make this much in the peak season, and blah, blah, blah. Here's the bottom line, overall, profit margins and whatnot. But when you add those services and you find out what other maybe competition is doing, yada, 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 all the research that goes into it, and then you take those services, and of course, like you said, we have to make money off of them. We can't just not, I guess, just let it sit there, right? It actually adds a lot to the overall goal and bottom line of what we do. And so I think it's really, and like you said, we're going to see a big shift in mindset, because the owner that we sent this to, he was like, I didn't even think about that. Like, I didn't even think about, getting a horse riding lesson package, or, whatever all the other services that we think we could provide and add into and kind of create that concierge experience, which is funny to me because coming from the hotel side, this is my bread and butter. Like, this is what we are, from coming from the front desk, the origin, the heart and the hub of the hotel. That's what we love. We love to create those services and, put the rose petals on the bed and do the whole concierge, find the favorite restaurant, give them tickets to do whatever. That's really, for me, it's a natural thing. But on the vacation rental side, we're seeing a shift, like, and like you said, midweek cleans. I've been preaching this for a while with some internal friends and business people, but I think we're going to have to see that change as well. It's the entry barrier for people to get in the vacation rental market 5 years ago, I think, was very low. Like, almost anybody could really enter in with a property, whether it's theirs or it's not, and do pretty well. But now we're seeing that barrier rise up a little bit as I think the more well thought out and service oriented and detail oriented that we become, we're going to see that barrier rise a little bit. And part of it's just, at the end of the day, sometimes the minimum isn't going to cut it anymore.
Yeah. Where do you think that is? As you think that barrier, I agree. Do you think that barrier is getting harder on the marketing side? Like, it's that much harder to be effective at marketing your property? Or do you think if you had to pick one, the barrier is higher on the service side and you got to be really dedicated to service it?
See, I think there's a little bit of both. And the reason why I say that is because, like we've talked about, this is not a new thing, right? Vacation rentals are not new to the world. It's not like they just were born 5 years ago or 3 years ago and we're all just kind of learning as we go. I think now that we're seeing, I think the barrier is rising just because we're seeing a lot of people that maybe have never thought or considered themselves to be in the hospitality industry, right? Are starting to see the effect of what it's like to take care of a guest, what it's like to have somebody come to their property that they have an emotional tie to. Let's be honest. If I listed my house on Airbnb, I wouldn't just be like, all right, yeah, check in, check out, whatever. That's my property. I want them to have a good time. I want them to leave a good review. So we've become more emotionally tied. And now I think we're seeing not only a flood of inventory, because a lot of people, I think, get into for the, the extra income, it pays for the mortgage or it pays for the taxes or whatever. But now with I would say with the rise of just hospitality as a whole, there's a big awareness issue with, hotels, and like people my age aren't jumping into the industry, right? They're not seeing this as a huge opportunity. But I think as people are starting to do with the vacation rental stuff, that is where we're going to see it rise. It was at first started as a great idea to make side income, but as people grow and see, not only does that income increase, but it increases over time as they, I guess, fine tune. Like my podcast, I like to use an example. The first episode probably sucks. Actually, no, I'm going to say it sucks. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to edit, didn't know how to make my intro sound or find my style. But I think people and hosts and managers are starting to find their style after a long time. A period of time of getting reviews and fine tuning their operations and fine tuning their brand and all this stuff. And of course, marketing is getting harder and harder and harder because there's such a high demand for it. So the price will go up, and then optimization will go up. And if you're not paying or, using the right keyword or putting in the right distribution channel like Facebook or Instagram or Google, like all the stuff, right? There just becomes every factor counts now. Back 5 years ago, I don't think every factor counted. It was like, hey, list it, get booked, have fun. Now it's everything is counting.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I mean, we at FlipKey, we did a lot with SEM arbitrage, and it was much easier to do then than it is now.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's kind of a broader answer to your question, but I think it's just going to be it's a big shift. I think it's going to be a really big shift in how the market will change with time.
Yep, totally agree. I think we're on the same page, and I think that bleeds into one of the more recent articles that we wrote for the VRM Intel magazine about an identity shift in the marketplace.
No, I was actually just going to ask about that because I read that article, and this kind of goes off of something I've always had as a core belief, as from being a hotel manager to property manager here now. You talk about the shift in mindset from property manager to hospitality provider. Can you I want to dive in a little bit on this trend and your vision and kind of insight on the impacts of the industry that it's going to have. Because like I said, this is something I practice and preach. I believe it's going to be the huge game changer of what really the overall standard is for our industry.
Yeah, I think this, happy to. Maybe we'll even riff on this a little bit here during this conversation. But, I think this article was born out of a few conversations I've been having with people in the industry and that I've been thinking about internally. And I don't think it's much of a mystery, but, I just felt that vacation rental property manager just feels like the wrong label. Honestly, it feels like the wrong label for this business. Mm-hmm. And it feels like it does a disservice to a lot of the work that goes into preparing this property and managing the guest experience and everything that happens. These folks are hospitality providers. I think that's not the perfect, moniker. It's not the perfect name for what people do. Maybe we'll come up with a better one here on the show, but it's certainly better than property manager because, in my mind, a property manager just feels really transactional, reactive. I'm managing there's not a lot of emotion to that word. I'm your property manager. If you've got a problem, you should probably call me. And, I've got some renters who come in, whether they're short-term or long-term, and, I make sure that they get in. And if there's something that happens, they call me. I'm like, that isn't what this business is.
Yeah.
It's really far from that. It's not transactional. It's experiential. It's not reactive. It's proactive. And it's not property management. It's hospitality. And I think we got to get it right. We owe it to the industry and to everybody who works really hard to deliver on that experience to come up with something that's better. So that was sort of the impetus behind it. I think the trend is really clear. You can look at it from a whole number of ways. Like, when 10 years ago, you could definitely pack up your own sheets and towels and bring your own toilet paper and head to a rental in a big popular destination on the Eastern Seaboard. And nowadays, you can't get away with that as an operator or a hospitality provider, because that's not hospitality. Hospitality is you can show up and like everything you need is there, and you've thought through the details, and you're there to make sure that somebody has a great trip. They don't have to bring their own sheets. That's just a small example of that trend that's continued, and I don't think we're done with it. I think there's further to go for what it means to be a hospitality provider in this space, and personalization to the guest when they show up. And by personalization, I don't just mean like you printed out their name and you put it on a basket and put it on the dining room table. I mean, you're interacting with the guest ahead of time. You're understanding, what they want to get out of this trip and what's important to them and how you can help them and how you can help manage that experience from start to finish so that they have the best one.
No, I love that. And I think you'll agree with this as I start to form kind of like the visual or maybe explain a little bit. But I think the industry that we are in, hospitality, restaurants, hotels, vacation rentals, all like, we have one of the most unique industries where I don't think many people understand the full potential and full value. I definitely think there are, but I think that as an overall industry as a whole, I don't think we understand what is at our fingertips right now. I think it's just so hard because there's not many, like we talked about this on an episode earlier on in the show with H Careers on how there's over 1 million jobs in the hospitality industry, specifically with lodging, but that are open. And there's, 80% of millennials don't even think of this as a career or a job opportunity that they could see themselves in or even think about it, even though we dine and we stay and we travel all the time. But then as overall industry, we don't see that this is one of the most creative industries that we could probably have ever formed in this world. Like, if you just think about all the cool things, like I love talking about, a simple solution, right? There's a problem when there's like, I'll use another episode that we did earlier, room service trays cluttering the hallway and staff not being able to know when the trays are ready to be retrieved. And then the creation of a simple button helps track that, save costs and money on operation side, but also enhance the guest experience. So then you think about all these little problems that we see and maybe little hiccups, or maybe it doesn't apply to the whole industry, but applies to your property. We are able to be so creative and do something so unique that it's a game changer. It's like a huge, like just Breezeway as itself. Like, think about Breezeway, like it's probably for you, like this is not just a software. This is a creative outlet that we get to fine tune. And like you said, with this whole experience and this whole talk of taking care of the guests and the personalization, we get to add that. It's not just, well, I use Breezeway for my properties, blah, blah, blah. It helps us clean and get on top of our schedule. And so that way we don't have angry guests, but it's like, no, it enhances us to do this on top of giving us the freedom and the ability to go above and beyond and add that personalization. So I think for us, like, I just think it's one of the most underestimated and undervalued things with the industry is that really we have something so powerful and so creative at our fingertips that I don't think we take full advantage of yet.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting, and I totally agree with you. I think that's well stated. It's very interesting. For us, for me personally, it's incredibly rewarding to try and create a product that delivers value and, to a lot of managers and a lot of clients, and tries to help solve their problems in novel ways and really expand out from, this mission of the guest experience and the operations and the property care and service. It's broad. That's why we started a whole nother product around messaging and how you message guests and how you automatically message guests, but not because we wanted to just insert ourselves into that flow, but because I believe once the guest has arrived, that moves from a marketing exercise to an operational exercise. And the byproduct of messaging and communicating seamlessly with the guest via text is going to be more operational challenge, more operational tasks and requests. And so if we can be close to that and then help you enable those, like actually raise your hand, send a message and raise your hand and say, I want to do more for this guest. I'm reaching out to see what I can do. And the byproduct of that is they're going to tell me something that I can do for them. Now I need to execute on it. So that's just a small example of, playing off of what you said, that that creativity is certainly there. I think we underestimate, I wasn't sure where you were going to go with this, and it's pretty cool when you were talking about underestimating the full potential at our fingertips. I thought you were going to go in a different direction, which is, I think in the vacation rental, short-term rental space, folks are underestimating the position that they're in the larger ecosystem of real estate. And by that, what I mean is the way that you take care of a property for a homeowner who is their second home, and you're sort of handling that maintenance for them and making sure they have a good experience, that asset management, concierge level of service that you just have to do because you're renting it and you're turning it over and you're there and they're not there. That's the future of how people want to interact with lots of real estate. And I think, vacation rental hospitality providers are sitting there with a lot of experience in that area and not taking advantage of that or the full potential of that.
That I actually is, I agree. It's a whole nother, I guess, subtopic we can call it of the overall umbrella, but it's something that we do, like on our management side, like we do see as a big role. Like when you go from property manager to hospitality provider, it really does involve all the stakeholders regarding guests, team, and owners alike. So I think when you have investors, that are putting the money into the real estate and the property itself, that does become another aspect, really. So I think that is it's just another sub-umbrella or subtopic of the umbrella.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of dive in a little bit with just kind of as we're talking, and I love this conversation. I think this is something that I think is a conversation that needs to happen more on a public basis, like a podcast or interviews or whatever. I just think it's so many times I've had conversations like this behind without a microphone, but and in today's world, I think this is so huge. But I'm going to call you a mastermind, okay? Because this is a mastermind series. We want to definitely reflect that for the show. But as the mastermind, from your experience with Flipkey to Breezeway, and then of course it sounds like another service and product of the text messaging and all that good stuff. What is the key advice or piece of knowledge from what we've talked about already, or just from your time that you think everyone listening should know?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, so I'm going to start a little high level, and I think I can answer this question high level, and then through the course of the answer, bring it down to a really specific, tangible tip that people can take away. So starting at the sort of like super high level, if you're involved in business, if you're in business or, anything that you're trying to do and you're trying to be successful at it, you have to ask yourself, well, or I think it's prudent to ask yourself, what makes you special? What's your secret weapon? What's your advantage that you can bring to this endeavor, whether it's business or something personal, that's going to help you be more successful at it than someone else? Because we live in a competitive world. And I think, that could be you're really good at design, or maybe it's marketing, or it's operations, et cetera. But you have to think about what makes you special, both personally and then as you approach a business, what's special about your role. And I think, my tip in this context, as I bring it closer to a tangible commentary, is, here what makes hospitality providers special is the service that they can deliver. Mm-hmm. And really focus on the service, and just encourage people. I think it's really hard to be special at the marketing. I agree with you. It's a hard game. It's getting more and more complicated. You have to pay attention to every detail on the marketing side, just like you do on the operations side. Mm-hmm. And you got to be using every tool that's available to you. But you're doing all of that just to catch up. You're doing all of that just to be in the game. It's the service that can make you special, that can leapfrog you and really differentiate you. I think folks are going to have, the average listener here is going to have a hard time being super special at the marketing, but they can much more easily be super special at the service. And it's service for the guest and service for the owner. And so, my tangible tip in that regard is, when you talked earlier about onboarding a new owner and a new property owner to the program, everybody wants to expand inventory, right? Yeah. Everybody wants another product on their system. And I heard this from a client, and then we've sort of expanded on it. But in onboarding a new owner, talking to them and saying, look, I want you to write down 5 things that you want us to focus on for your property. 5 things from an asset protection standpoint as an owner that you really want us to watch. What are your concerns? Are you worried about the furnace? You're worried about the roof? What's going on with this property? And they're the 5 things that you definitely want us to be on top of. We're going to watch everything, but we're going to pay particular attention to these. Mm-hmm. And you're going to feel that in the service that we deliver. So tell us 5 things there. And then, and this one I love, which is like, tell us 5 things that are important to you every time you come to your house. Mm-hmm. You want the lights on, you want the window, you want the shades open, you want them closed. What are the 5 things that are so important to you when you walk into your home every time that you want it to be consistent, so that when you walk in, it feels like your house. It feels like the house has been prepared for you, because that's my job. And I'm not just a hospitality provider to the guest. I'm a hospitality provider to you as the owner. And I want to make you feel that way when you show up. And I'm going to take those, I'm going to save them. If I'm using Breezeway, I'm going to put them into Breezeway. There's property-specific requirements. If I'm using something else, I'm going to try and keep track of it there. But that's the level of detail and service. And I think that's where this is all going. And I encourage people, that's what you should be focused on.
I love that. I think that's huge. I've applied similar tactics into how I hire people, right? When I've interviewed people for a hotel job or for a restaurant or whatever, taking those questions, those types of questions, with 5 key things that we should know about the property, what it means to you, what do you like when you show up, and what makes this feel like home. I think it's super important, because I think when, as a hospitality provider for the vacation rental, aspect of things, I think lose sight that we are taking, not that we lose sight 100%, but at the end of the day, we are managing somebody's asset. This is something that they have worked very hard for and earned with their own money. And I think we lose that touch, and it's okay, well, we're going to take care of the guests, so you no longer matter. We don't want that. I don't think that is an intentional thing that we do as, like you say, hospitality providers. But I've definitely seen it. And I think that's where, again, differentiator here, But when you take care of all stakeholders involved, guest, team, owner, it really will make a difference in everything that we do as operational. Whether you're talking about Breezeway things or guest experiences or anything, like it just really becomes the game changer when you look at every single aspect. It comes to every detail. Nothing's too small, nothing's too big.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I love that. I like that last. Will, you nailed it at the end there. I like that.
Thanks. I wish we could have. I've been trying to think of a different name for a hospitality provider, but I think that will just be something we'll launch in like a episode part 2 or something like that. We can.
I like that.
So this can also tie into to Breezeway's mission as well, and this is actually going to be part of a project that I'm going to create on the podcast for the future. Just a fun episode. But what does hospitality mean to you?
Wow. I think, and I'm going to answer this personally, not separate from Breezeway, but
okay.
I think it means a few things. It means hospitality to me means personal attention, high quality service, and memorable experiences. When those three are combined, and I guess, and I think, there's a level of relaxation and peace of mind that all of those create. But hospitality is, as a consumer, is a state of mind. Like when I know when I've had great service and it feels like a hospitality service, when there's a lot of attention that's paid to me and someone really cares about the experience that I'm going to have. That's what hospitality means. That's what if you're throwing a really good party and you're the host for that party, like that's how your guests feel about it when they've left. They're like, wow, that was awesome. Like, we really had a great time.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that those 3 pillars are great. And so now just a kind of a goofy, funny, silly question, I guess, that we can use to kind of wrap up. But what's the coolest vacation rental you've ever stayed in, and why was it so cool?
I stayed in a bunch of. I want to hear your answer after this, but I've stayed in a lot of vacation rentals over the last 16 years. I think one of the coolest that I've stayed in was with a manager in Vieques, Puerto Rico, the Bravos boys. And my wife and I traveled down there, and we just had the best experience staying at, they put us up in a great property right on the water.
Oh yeah.
What's interesting, and I've just sort of like realized this as I'm answering your question, which is the reason it was so cool was these guys who were our hosts for that trip. They drove us around the island. They invited us to their house for a dinner party. They took us to another party at the W. And, the vacation property was super cool. Is it the nicest property I've ever stayed at? No, it's not the nicest property. I probably couldn't even tell you any like really cool features about the actual property, but that experience made it the coolest vacation rental because of the way that we were treated by the folks we were staying with. And it really just made for an incredible trip.
That's awesome. I think, I like that answer. I think that's part of like it just ties in everything we've said. I think it just comes down to that. The experience overall trumps, I think, the actual property itself. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a great question. What about you?
See, this is the thing. I've always stayed mostly in hotels. So I know, but staying, like, as I'm traveling a lot more, I'm exploring my tastes in lodging, which is going into the vacation rental side. I would say it's not the coolest I've stayed in yet, but it's going to be because I'm about to actually head there tomorrow. There's a property that I booked in Florida that is a Star Wars theme, and I'm a sucker for Star Wars, so I'm kind of excited and to like geek out on this whole like experience I'm about to walk into. So I think that'll be a top one for me for a while until I start exploring more and into out of country and a couple other cool trips. But
yeah, that sounds very cool.
Yeah, just
post some pictures.
Yeah, it's just a geeky side of me, you know. It's like, you know, I grew up with Star Wars, so it's like, all right, this is gonna be kind of cool. So we'll have some fun with that, and I'll definitely send you over what the experience was like. So
I love that.
Well, Jeremy, I just want to say thank you, man. Like, this is such a, I don't know, I've shared a little bit with the audience on the overall Mastermind series and just what we've been creating with the show, and it's just really cool. I appreciate people like you, everyone that's been on the series. It's, you know, 10 episodes, 10 weeks, but then of course we have a couple bonus episodes like this that we're going to throw in. And I just think, you know, the people, the true masterminds, like the reason why I picked everyone that is on this show or on this series is for a reason. And I just gotta say, like, you know, massive respect and kudos for, you know, what you've done and what you're doing and just everything that's going on in the industry as every single person has become like a disruptor or a big game changer in the industry, and kind of like everything we've just been talking about. I think it's really, it just means a lot. You know, it just means a lot that there's people that care. There's people that take into consideration everything that we've just discussed and more. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to have this be a part of the show and just working with you guys and just overall being on.
Awesome. Yeah, we appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate really thoughtful questions. It's clear your take on the industry, your vision as well shines through in the series, and I appreciate that as well. We need more people like you who are equally dedicated to and interested, right? Have a passion for it. It's clear you've got an amazing passion for it, and which makes it fun for folks like me as well. So thanks.
No worries. Well, listeners, take note, enjoy, check out Breezeway. Definitely is worth the I guess overall dive into. Like I said, the barrier is rising. So as it rises, just take note. Like I said, it's important. Every aspect's going to count. So thank you, Jeremy, for being on the show. And we will be back again next week with another episode on the Vacation Rental Mastermind series.
Thank you so much for listening. We love your support and want to provide the best we can to all our listeners. So please find us online, social media, and on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast.
What's up, everybody? If you've gotten this far into the episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, then you are amazing, and thank you so much for tuning in. We want to send you two places really quickly. If you can, check out the show notes and click the hospitality.fm link. Check out all of our other shows on the podcast network. And don't forget, if you have someone that you want to hear on the podcast, then fill out the guest fill out form so that way we can get them on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy another episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast.